First bosses.
While many love to talk about final bosses, or bosses in general for countdowns, I think we really need to give first bosses some credit. After all, since they're the first boss, they help establish the game and how it will be early on.
First bosses set the tone for a game in general, being the first major test of the player's skills, or they can just turn into a complete train wreck.
Now we could easily do a countdown on either the best or the worst of these types of boss fights, but instead, we decided to cover both at the same time. Because why not?
Just a bit of clarification for both lists though. Obviously, we're only talking about first bosses from games at least one of us has played, and for both lists as a whole, there will only be one per franchise so as to ensure variety.
On the positive of the spectrum, the candidates for the best first bosses are based not necessarily on how easy or hard it is, but more how well it sets up the rest of the game.
And on the negative end of the spectrum, the candidates for the worst first bosses are not based on difficulty or lack thereof. We're judging those based on annoyance and dissatisfaction.
So without further delay, let's begin this list, alternating between the two topics, starting with the worst.
Get ready because...
It's boss time!
Number 5.
By the way, keep in mind, the worst candidates aren't necessarily from bad games. And on that note, let's talk about...
Final Fantasy VII! From the very beginning, Final Fantasy VII does indeed deliver when it comes to a great opening segment, but that gets soured when the Guard Scorpion is sent to grace you with its lovely presence.
Guard Scorpion? Lovely? The sarcasm is strong with this one. Keep in mind, the entire opening stage is actually really well done, but there always has to be a downside in everything that's great, and the Guard Scorpion is just that. One of the biggest issues with this battle comes from just how boring it is.
The Guard Scorpion seems to have gone to the Mist Dragon school of AI, seeing as this fight doesn't have much purpose short of making sure you're accustomed to the active time battle system.
And though the Mist Dragon has some, albeit very little, plot relevance to Final Fantasy IV, the only relevance the Guard Scorpion has is introducing you to some of Final Fantasy VII's hilarious mistranslations. But while it's laughable at later points in the game, in the Guard Scorpion's case, it only leads to annoyance.
At one point of the battle, the Guard Scorpion's tail will go up, and when it does, Cloud apparently decides to play Schadenfreude and tell Barret to attack the Guard Scorpion's tail while it's up. In doing so, it triggers the boss's strongest attack. The issue here is that in the original Japanese version, it was supposed to tell you not to attack the tail while it was up. Great work, Squaresoft!
But even with the mistranslation issue aside, the Guard Scorpion's tail is up for an extremely long period of time. So unless you need to heal, you'll find yourself just sitting there waiting for the tail to go down before you start attacking again. Not a great way to introduce a game, if you ask me.
Well, look at it this way, Mavi. At least it's not the Spanish translation.
Kit, I thought we agreed not to mention that again.
Did we, Mavi? Or didn't we?
Number 5.
When you hear the phrases the Kirby series and first bosses together, most people are bound to immediately think of the laughably easy Wispy Woods.
Kit, you are aware that he's the next boss on this list, right?
Well, I was creating suspense, because his incarnation from Kirby's Dream Land 3 pushes the hackneyed boss concept into maximum overdrive. Sort of.
Now at first, the Wispy Woods battle starts off exactly the same as Wispy Woods battles before. He'll shoot wind gusts, and he'll provide you with fruit to damage him. However, things change drastically once he loses half of his health bar.
Once Wispy is on his last legs, he quite literally snaps his roots, sports a rather frankly demonic mug, and decides to relentlessly chase down Kirby, spewing rotten vegetables as his new method of attack.
Plus, you now have to hit Wispy in the face and nowhere else, because his roots block all incoming attacks. Compared to other Wispy Woods battles, this is a huge step forward. And other than the Wispy Woods battle from Kirby 64 and the Flowery Woods battle from Triple Deluxe, I don't think any other Wispy Woods battle has played the creativity card nearly as much as this one.
Card games and apple trees, huh, Mavi?
I would have preferred an apples to apples joke, but to each their own.
Number 4.
Back in the days of the Sega Genesis, Dr. Robotnik had all manner of machines to confront Sonic the Hedgehog with at the end of nearly every stage. Not all of these were the best, though.
I mean, yeah, on one hand, he made Metal Sonic and the Death Egg, but on the other hand, why is the Eggmobile D even a thing?
I honestly think the footage speaks for itself here. Robotnik's only method of attack, and I use that term loosely, is to drive back and forth across the screen at an easily avoidable speed.
Yeah, we know that the classic Sonic games weren't really known for having complex boss fights, but come on! Even the first boss of the original game was more intimidating than this, and he just swung a ball around!
This quote-unquote fight is made even more insultingly easy by the Egg Mobile Deal's absurdly large hitbox. Is there anywhere on this thing that doesn't do damage to it?
Honestly, I think the only spot you can't hit it is the drill at the front, which is quite literally his only means of doing damage to you. I'm starting to think that Robotnik cheated on his IQ test, because a man with an IQ 300 should not be doing this terribly.
Number 4.
The Crash Bandicoot series definitely knows how to make a good impression with its first bosses. Most of the time. But when they hit the hammer on the nail, the end result is definitely something, and with that in mind, Tiny Tiger.
Now, the previous game in the series contained Tiny's debut appearance as the game's third boss, which was one of the biggest disappointments in the series. Fortunately, this rematch against him in a gladiator arena makes up for it big time.
Essentially, Tiny goes through two main attacks. First, he jumps around the Coliseum floor, and after a few leaps, attempts a downward stab with his trident, a move that leaves him open to attack.
After knocking him down and experiencing quite a discouraging reaction from the audience, Tiny jumps out of the arena and, in classic gladiator fashion, unleashes a pride of lions to eat you alive.
A few spins later, or perhaps some frantic running, and Tiny's back to jumping like a plumber. Similar to the Egg Mobile D, this is a relatively simple boss battle in concept, but the execution is what makes it stand out in a positive light.
Plus, unlike the Eggmobile D, this battle can actually be quite challenging, especially if you don't have the double jump or tornado spin, which, unless you're hacking the game, you shouldn't have at this point. Speaking of power-ups, you're also rewarded with the ever-so-useful powered-up version of your body slime after this battle, which has the ability to break stronger crates. Quite useful.
Number 3.
Oh, Secret of Mana. Such a popular game amongst retro Square Enix fans, but such an infamous game among countdown artists. From my experiences, I actually enjoyed this game, especially when playing co-op with friends. But if there's one thing this game does not do well, it's its boss fights.
This case is immediately proven with the game's first boss, the Mantis Ant. Oh, where to begin with this bug? Well, it appears to have come right the hammer space out of nowhere, and as soon as it appears, dear God, it's Greenheart, that music! Ugh.
The frantic and honestly ear-stabbing music is bad enough, but the battle itself is pretty bad too. The first issue with the Mantis Ant, unavoidable homing attacks. You don't do that for a first boss.
Not only has level 0 Gem Missile an attack that never misses, it does ludicrously high damage compared to the Mantis Ant's other attacks, which are pretty pathetic in comparison.
But here's the ultimate salt on the wound. Despite the fact that level 0 Gem Missile never misses and can easily end you quickly, especially since he spams it a lot, here's the thing. You cannot lose this battle!
So not only do you have the opposite of a force-loss battle, but the Mantis Ant is prone to being locked into predictable attack patterns too. Either way, you have a first boss that's annoying and cheap, or one that's pathetically easy.
Great way to start your game, Square Enix. Jeez, that's 2 Square Enix bosses on the worst side. Is there a Square Enix boss on the best side coming up?
You'll just have to see when Part 2's up.